Good evening, everyone, and welcome to this very special, no-holds-barred, year-end episode of Strange Planet. Tonight, there's no guest. It's just you and me, and I'm going to attempt to unpack what has been one of the most extraordinary, intense, and paradigm-shifting years in the entire history of UFO disclosure. I'm talking about a year, 2025, that saw thousands of credible sightings, crowdsourced underwater anomalies mapped in unprecedented detail, a peer-reviewed scientific study providing empirical evidence of something monitoring our nuclear tests for decades, a landmark congressional hearing where military veterans and an active duty sailor testified under oath to encounters that defy explanation. My longtime colleague on Coast to Coast AM, George Knapp, brought his decades of investigative firepower to Capitol Hill. Bipartisan legislative pushes that came closer than ever to forcing real declassification. And finally, the cultural earthquake that was the documentary The Age of Disclosure, which didn't just break streaming records, it shattered the wall between this topic and mainstream acceptance. I've been talking about UFOs for 4 decades. Late nights on Coast to Coast AM, on my various radio programs, countless hours here on Strange Planet, interviewing whistleblowers, pilots, scientists, and insiders. But I have never seen a year like 2025. The volume of data, the quality of witnesses, the seriousness with which lawmakers are now treating this, it's unprecedented. And yet, we still don't have the full truth on the table. That tension, that push and pull between momentum and obstruction is what defined this year more than anything else. So on this episode, I'm going to go chronologically, event by event, testimony by testimony, number by number. And I want to start in the opening weeks of 2025. The skies were already on fire. The National UFO Reporting Center, which still proudly uses the term UFO, even as the government insists on UAP, logged more than 2,000 credible sightings in the first 6 months alone. That's a massive jump from recent years. We're talking commercial pilots, military aviators, law enforcement, and ordinary citizens pulling out their phones to capture glowing orbs that hovered silently, split into multiples, reformed, and then shot off at impossible angles. We saw transmedium objects, craft that move from water to air and back again without so much as a ripple, reported with increasing frequency along both coasts. Clusters of synchronized lights performed maneuvers that no drone swarm we know of could replicate. International reports poured in. Reflective metallic objects outpacing fighter jets over Canadian airspace. Formations of lights over the Australian outback. Similar orbs converging in dramatic fashion over rural Iowa. One story that carried over from late 2024 and dominated early 2025 conversations was the series of incursions over U.S. military installations in the United Kingdom. Newly released National Police Air Service logs and video footage painted a chilling picture of events between November 20th and 22nd, 2024, over RAF Lakenheath, RAF Mildenhall, and RAF Feltwell, 3 bases that host significant U.S. Air Force assets. Around 10 p.m. on November 22nd, an NPAS EC-135 helicopter crew was forced to execute a steep emergency dive to avoid collision after 2 fast-moving craft targeted and pursued them. The objects matched the helicopter's speed of approximately 190 miles per hour in what police entries described as an unprovoked pursuit that continued for several minutes, even as the pilots dove to escape. Separate reports documented roughly 20 drone-like sightings across those bases, with eyewitnesses describing 10 to 15 drones potentially into base airspace, enough to ground surrounding aircraft. One witness, using night vision goggles, reported 5 to 6 drones flying above the A1065 highway. Another described large stationary things, tic-tacs. Britain's Airprox board later concluded the helicopter incident involved lights from a nearby U.S. Air Force F-15, citing radar data showing the aircraft came within 1,700 feet. But the police logs and pilot accounts directly contradicted that explanation. leaving experts and the public questioning whether these were advanced foreign drones, experimental technology, or something far more anomalous. The incident set a tone of heightened national security concern heading into the new year. As winter gave way to spring, attention turned to Capitol Hill. On May 1st, 2025, the UAP Disclosure Fund, in collaboration with members of the House Oversight Committee, hosted a pivotal closed-door briefing titled Understanding UAP, Science, National Security, and Innovation. Former ATIP director Luis Elizondo took center stage alongside Harvard astrophysicist Avi Loeb and retired Rear Admiral Tim Galaudet. Elizondo presented compelling imagery, including a massive lenticular-shaped object estimated at hundreds of feet across, captured over the western United States. Skeptics later suggested similarities to natural or man-made features, but the briefing focused on broader implications, the potential for revolutionary breakthroughs in energy and propulsion if we could openly study these phenomena, alongside undeniable national security risks posed by objects demonstrating capabilities far beyond our own. Avi Loeb's presence was particularly significant. Throughout 2025, Loeb continued to be one of the most vocal and credible academic voices calling for rigorous data-driven study of UAP. At the May briefing and in multiple public appearances, he advocated for $1 billion investment in a network of AI-powered observatories, the next phase of his Galileo project. These new observatories, deployed at strategic sites, use multi-wavelength instruments, infrared, optical, radio, and even audio, combined with machine learning algorithms to scan the sky for anomalies, filtering out millions of known objects to flag true outliers. Loeb repeatedly emphasized triangulation, using multiple sensors to calculate precise distances, speeds, and accelerations of UAP, turning anecdotal reports into hard science. Loeb's Galileo project made tangible progress in 2025. The first fully operational observatory went live at Harvard early in the year, with additional sites coming online across the U.S. and internationally. By mid-year, the system had already cataloged thousands of hours of sky data, identifying several unexplained high-speed objects that exhibited non-ballistic trajectories, meaning they changed direction without visible propulsion or deceleration consistent with known physics. Loeb stressed that these were preliminary detections, requiring further verification, but they demonstrated the power of systematic, unbiased observation over reliance on sporadic military sensor data. He also updated lawmakers and the public on his ongoing Pacific expedition, analyzing spherules recovered from the site of the 2014 interstellar meteor IM-1, which entered Earth's atmosphere at over 60 kilometers per second. In 2025 analyses, Loeb's team announced that some of the hundreds of tiny metallic spherules recovered from the ocean floor exhibited isotopic ratios, particularly in beryllium, lanthanum, and uranium, that do not match any known natural meteorites or human-made alloys. Loeb cautiously described these compositions as anomalous, suggesting either an unknown natural process or, more provocatively, possible technological origin from outside our solar system. He compared the spherules to industrial byproducts, noting their strength and heat resistance far exceeded typical micrometeorites. While he stopped short of claiming artificiality, he argued strongly that the findings warrant independent replication and further seafloor searches for larger fragments that might contain electronic or structural components. Loeb's broader message throughout the year was that science must follow the evidence wherever it leads. In interviews and op-eds, he framed UFO research as a no-lose proposition. If the anomalies are advanced human technology, we gain critical intelligence on potential threats. If they are extraterrestrial or interstellar, humanity achieves the greatest scientific discovery of all time. His calm, methodical approach, free of sensationalism, yet unafraid of bold hypotheses, lent enormous legitimacy to the briefing and the year's disclosure efforts. The session wasn't public legislation, but it reinvigorated lawmakers and set the stage for what was to come. Summer brought one of the most intriguing developments of the year: the explosion of data from the Enigma app, a crowdsourced UAP and USO reporting platform. Starting in August and continuing through the end of the year, Enigma documented more than 9,000 sightings of unidentified submersible objects within 10 miles of the United States shoreline or other major bodies of water. Of those, roughly 500 occurred within 5 miles of the coast, and over 150 specifically described objects either hovering above the water, entering the water, or emerging from the water. The data revealed clear clusters, with California and Florida accounting for the highest concentrations. Navy personnel shared videos of oddly shaped craft rising in synchronized formation from the Pacific. Witnesses captured lighted objects moving beneath the surface before transitioning seamlessly into the air. The patterns were unmistakable: heightened activity near water, near military installations, and near nuclear assets. Experts debated whether this pointed to advanced submarine technology from adversarial nations or something far more exotic, perhaps underwater bases or intelligent entities using the oceans as cover. As author Kent Heckenlively put it in interviews, the ocean seems like a great place to hide. The Enigma data gave the public a real-time, map-based view of just how persistent and patterned this underwater phenomenon appears to be. October delivered a scientific milestone that lent empirical weight to long-held theories. Researchers at California's Palomar Observatory published a peer-reviewed paper in Nature's Scientific Reports, analyzing digitized astronomical glass plates taken between 1949 and 1957, before the launch of Sputnik, before humanity had anything in orbit. They discovered thousands of transient, star-like flashes appearing and disappearing on the plates. Many were ruled out as plate defects or known artifacts, but a significant number correlated directly with periods of nuclear testing. Transients were 45% more likely to appear within 24 hours of a nuclear detonation. Specific clusters matched well-documented UFO flaps, such as the July 19 to 27, 1952 wave over Washington, D.C., and another aligned with the Soviet Joe 21 test on March 17, 1956. The researchers observed transients hovering on at least 124 above-ground nuclear tests between 1951 and 1957, while some flashes were attributed to high-energy particles from the tests themselves. The study concluded there were small but statistically significant associations between these transients and eyewitness UFO reports near nuclear sites. In their words, our findings provide additional empirical support for the validity of the UAP phenomenon and its potential connection to nuclear weapons activity, contributing data beyond eyewitness reports. For the first time, we had hard archival photographic evidence suggesting something has been watching our nuclear program since its earliest days. Legislative efforts ran parallel. Senator Chuck Schumer, with strong bipartisan support from Senators Mike Rounds and Kristen Gillibrand, reintroduced robust amendments to the UAP Disclosure Act. The language called for a centralized collection of all UAP records, modeled after the JFK Assassination Records Collection Act, presumption of immediate public release, an independent review board with subpoena power, and eminent domain over any recovered technologies or biological material of non-human origin. In the House, Representatives Anna Paulina Luna, Tim Burchett, and Eric Burleson championed similar measures with a focus on whistleblower protection and declassification of legacy programs. David Grush continued advising Congressman Burleson's task force behind the scenes. Then came the moment many of us had been waiting for. Tuesday, September 9, 2025. The House Oversight and Government Reform Committee's task force on the declassification of federal secrets, chaired by Representative Anna Paulina Luna, held its first ever UAP-focused hearing titled Restoring Public Trust Through UAP Transparency and Whistleblower Protection. The witness panel was extraordinary. Air Force veteran Jeffrey Nuccitelli, a former military police officer with 16 years of service, described multiple incursions between 2003 and 2005 near what was then Vandenberg Air Force Base during high-stakes National Reconnaissance Office launches. He spoke of massive objects that appeared like flying buildings, approaching personnel, pulsing light, and moving in strange patterns. Each incident was witnessed by multiple personnel, documented, investigated, and reported up the chain of command. He told lawmakers, quote, "We sent information up, but we got no guidance down on how to handle these events." He said the encounters, quote, "changed our lives, the way we think about everything. It was incredibly profound," end quote. Air Force veteran Dylan Borland testified publicly for the first time about a 2012 incident at Langley Air Force Base and subsequent retaliation that lasted more than a decade. "Because of my direct knowledge of the reality of certain legacy UAP programs," he said, "my professional career was deliberately obstructed, and I have endured sustained reprisals from government agencies, efforts to undermine my clearance eligibility, and other mistreatment," end quote. In a historic first, active duty U.S. Navy Senior Chief Petty Officer Alejandro Wiggins, with 23 years of service, testified in a personal capacity about an incident in 2023 aboard the USS Jackson. A self-luminous tic-tac-shaped object emerged from the ocean before linking up with 3 other similar objects, he recounted. The orb then disappeared simultaneously with a high, synchronized, near-instantaneous acceleration, he said. There was no sonic boom, no conventional propulsion signature, yet the objects were detected on multiple sensors, including radar. Wiggins urged Congress to standardize sensors, improve training, and, most critically, create confidential, destigmatized reporting channels so sailors know reporting won't harm their careers. Representative Eric Burleson unveiled previously unreleased video footage showing a U.S. military MQ-9 Reaper drone firing a Hellfire missile at a high-speed metallic orb off the coast of Yemen in October of 2024. The missile appeared to strike the object, debris flashed, but the orb continued on its path, seemingly unaffected. "It kept going, and it looked like the debris was taken with it," Burleson said. "I'm not going to speculate what it is, but the question is, why are we being blocked from this information?" And then there was my old colleague from Coast to Coast AM, investigative journalist George Knapp. George has been digging into this topic since breaking the Area 51 and Bob Lazar stories in 1989, laid out the paper trail of declassified documents showing decades of government knowledge contrasted with public denial and ridicule. He spoke of the brutal treatment whistleblowers have endured, intimidation, career destruction, and the vault of videos and sensor data Congress still has not been allowed to see. "The secret is out," George told the committee. "How many videos have there been?" His testimony carried the weight of 35 years in the trenches and was a proud moment for everyone in our community. The hearing concluded with strong bipartisan calls, led by Chairwoman Luna, for legislation providing stronger UAP-specific whistleblower protections, an end to excessive overclassification, and funding for independent scientific research. November brought the cultural detonation many believe will be looked back on as the moment UAP entered the mainstream once and for all. The release of The Age of Disclosure. This wasn't just another documentary. It was a meticulously crafted 3-year labor of love directed by Dan Farah, narrated and executive produced by Luis Elizondo, with former senior intelligence officer Jay Stratton serving as another key executive producer. It premiered to stunned audiences at South by Southwest on March 9th of 2025, before its wide theatrical and Amazon Prime release on November 21st. Within days, it became the highest-grossing documentary in Amazon Prime history, surpassing every previous record and holding that title through the end of this year. The film runs 109 minutes and features an unprecedented lineup of 34 high-level insiders speaking on camera, many for the first time at this level of detail. You have Secretary of State Marco Rubio gravely warning, "We've had repeated instances of something operating in the airspace over restricted nuclear facilities, and it's not ours." Senators Kirsten Gillibrand and Mike Rounds discussing legislative battles, Former Director of National Intelligence James Clapper reflecting on intelligence community knowledge. Legendary Navy pilots, Commander David Fravor, Ryan Graves, and Alex Dietrich recounting their encounters. Scientists Hal Puthoff and Gary Nolan addressing materials and potential biologics. Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense for Intelligence Chris Mellon and retired Colonel Carl Nell laying out legacy programs and phased disclosure timelines. But the emotional core comes from Elizondo and Stratton. Elizondo, visibly passionate, describes the subject as the most successful disinformation campaign in human history, arguing that the public, Congress, and even presidents have been systematically kept out of the loop for 80 years. Stratton goes further, comparing the technology to atomic weapons on steroids and claiming first-hand observation of non-human craft and beings. The film interweaves archival footage, declassified documents, congressional hearings, and whistleblower testimonies into a cohesive narrative alleging recovery of off-world craft, non-human biologics, and a clandestine international race, particularly with China and Russia, to reverse engineer the materials for game-changing advances in propulsion, energy, and weaponry. It draws explicit parallels to the Manhattan Project in scale and secrecy. Director Dan Farah has said in interviews that the goal was never sensationalism, but accountability, to show how senior officials only learned the full scope in recent years thanks to whistleblowers, and are now demanding answers for the American people. The film ends on a hopeful yet urgent note. Disclosure could unite humanity, accelerate technological leaps, and force us to mature as a species in a crowded neighborhood. Critics argued it leaned too heavily on testimony without presenting physical evidence, and some questioned motives tied to book sales or streaming numbers. But the bipartisan participation, the sheer number of sightings and former officials willing to appear, and the record-breaking viewership forced mainstream media to cover it seriously. Late-night shows debated it, Capitol Hill organized private screenings, and polls showed a noticeable spike in public belief that the government is hiding evidence of non-human intelligence. Yet, even amid this momentum, pushback remained fierce. The Pentagon's All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office continued to insist in its reports that the vast majority of cases resolve to mundane explanations. Balloons, commercial drones, sensor artifacts, misidentifications. They reiterated there was no verifiable evidence of extraterrestrial technology or off-world origin. Key provisions of the UAP Disclosure Act were once again stripped or watered down in the final National Defense Authorization Act. Whistleblowers still face significant hurdles in coming forward, and the sightings never stopped. Late-year reports included high-altitude reflective triangles, orbs converging over populated areas, more transmedium activity along both coasts. Crowdsourced platforms continued to map patterns we simply cannot ignore. So here we are in late December 2025. Where does this extraordinary year leave us? We have more than 2,000 credible sightings in the first half alone. We have Enigma, mapping over 9,000 coastal USOs with clear entry and emergence events. We have Palomar's archival transients, providing statistical evidence of interest in our nuclear program since the 1940s. We have military veterans, Nucitelli, Borland, and active duty Chief Wiggins testifying under oath to encounters that changed their worldview. We have George Knapp, bringing decades of investigative credibility to Congress. We have Avi Loeb's Galileo Project, advancing the scientific frontier with new observatories, anomalous high-speed detections, and interstellar sphere rules, exhibiting compositions unmatched by known, natural, or terrestrial sources, pushing us to confront the possibility that some fraction of UAP may originate beyond our solar system. We have bipartisan lawmakers fighting for transparency and protections, and we have the age of disclosure, reaching tens of millions, forcing this topic into living rooms, boardrooms, and even the highest levels of government. The stigma is crumbling faster than at any point in history. Serious scientists, retired intelligence officials, lawmakers from both parties, and now the general public are demanding answers. Belief levels are at all-time highs, but the central questions burn brighter than ever. Are these advanced secret human programs? Technology from adversarial nations like China or Russia? Or are we dealing with non-human intelligence, perhaps monitoring our nuclear capabilities, our oceans, our technological evolution, for reasons we can only guess at? I've been on this beat long enough to have seen the shift from ridicule to rigorous inquiry. 2025 accelerated that shift into overdrive. In times of institutional distrust, geopolitical tension, and existential uncertainty, these stories resonate deeply because they touch something profound: our place in a vast universe, the limits of human knowledge, the possibility that we've been kept in the dark about the greatest discovery in history. Whatever 2026 brings, more hearings, actual declassified records, fallout from the documentary, new scientific studies, I truly believe we're standing on the cusp. The truth is straining against decades of containment, and it's getting harder and harder to hold back. Thank you for joining me on this long journey through 2025 on our strange planet. Stay curious, stay skeptical, but open-minded. Keep looking up, and these days maybe look down into the depths as well. Until next time, I'm Richard Serrett.
A new Richard Serrett's Strange Planet drops every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday.